What is up, everyone? Barricade here, and I'm bringing you guys my first episode of Spider-Man lore. I'm actually going to be talking about the Hostile Takeover novel that acts as a prequel to the game coming out later today. I went out of my way to finish the novel tonight. As I'm editing this, it's actually Wednesday night. The game comes out tomorrow night, Thursday night at 9 p.m. I'm going to be at GameStop getting it, and I'm going to be starting my walkthrough soon. It's going to be awesome. I cannot wait. But the main thing is I wanted to put out this video before the game came out so we can explain what exactly happens in this Hostile Takeover novel that acts as an official prequel to the Spider-Man PS4 game. So there's a lot of info to go over here, but I'll try to make it as easy and understandable as possible because there's so much stuff in this book, it's crazy. But I'm going to just kind of focus more on the main points of the story and as it leads to the beginning of the game, because that's pretty much how the novel ends. It pretty much ends in a sense that it's right before the game starts. In the trailers and everything we saw in the gameplays of the game, we saw that he's attacking Fisk at Fisk Tower and they're finally trying to bring him down. Well, this 400-page novel is actually simply explaining how they get to that point. What exactly happens in it is quite interesting, and hopefully I'm hoping the characters in it will make a return in the game because they're really interesting and I would love to see them in the game. So the whole premise of the story simply is one night Spider-Man catches a young man by the name of Andy who was stealing snakes, of all things, out of a snake shop. It was kind of a weird encounter. Spider-Man webs him up and gives him a life lecture and tries to help the kid to see the right way. At first the kid does look like he's, wants to do the right thing after their discussion. Andy states that his brother was the one that told him to steal the snakes, that it would be easy money, and then he mentioned something that his brother knows Scorpion and he works for Scorpion, the villain. Spider-Man wants to know more information about this, so he asks the kid where Scorpion is currently being held up, and Andy tells him that Scorpion has a hideout at a warehouse. Spider-Man lets the kid go and tells him, to stop doing stupid things, and he goes to the warehouse that Scorpion supposedly is hiding out at. And something very interesting here happens that is quite unexpected, and this is where the story starts to get pretty good. Spider-Man makes it to the warehouse and finds it completely empty, and he feels like the kid had tricked him. But out of nowhere, he gets attacked by a bunch of henchmen, and Spider-Man defeats them, but actually someone else appears, someone that he didn't expect. Not Scorpion, but a man dressed in completely black to where you can't really see his face, and he starts fighting Spider-Man. This man in black moves and fights like Spider-Man. He can stick to walls, he can jump far, he moves exactly like Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's sitting here wondering how can someone imitate him. The confrontation ends and the guy gets away. Spider-Man, unsure of what happened, goes back to where he spoke to Andy and got the false tip from. And when he gets back to where Andy was, he finds that Andy has been shot and killed where he had left him. And there's a whole bunch of police there, and he meets a police officer by the name of Yuri Watanabe, who's actually one of the main characters in a new game that's coming out soon. So we're going to see more of her in the actual game itself. She's an awesome character, and she affiliates with Spider-Man because she knows he's a hero, but she keeps it on the down low, and she doesn't let anyone know that she's working with him. And there's more of a reason to that, and I'll get into that in a second. But after she meets Spider-Man, she actually tells him to meet up with her in an office so she can show him something. So when he gets there, she shows him a video feed that was recorded off of a camera. Shortly after Spider-Man had left to go to the warehouse that Andy, sent him to, not too long after that, another Spider-Man showed up. Not Peter Parker, but someone else in a Spider-Man suit who had similar powers. And he found the kid, and that false Spider-Man killed him by shooting him with the gun. And so now, out of nowhere, there's this person dressing like Spider-Man, has Spider-Man powers, and he killed Andy, this poor kid that, who just bit off to more than he could chew, and he was just put in a horrible situation. So now that people know about this, they're going around thinking that Spider-Man is this criminal that has killed somebody, that has killed this kid named Andy. and it's not Peter Parker, but it's someone that has similar powers. And when she shows, when Watanabe shows Spider-Man this, she says, "Yeah, I know it wasn't you. I can tell it's an imposter because one, you don't use guns, and two, that person's suit looks a little different." There's like one kind of an ongoing joke. They kept saying that the webs, I guess, the lines of the webs are too close to one another. They're not as wide as it actually looks in a normal suit. So they kept saying that throughout the book, like so many times. And that's the main thing that they would use to distinguish the differences between the real Spider-Man and the fake one. That for whatever reason, the suit didn't look exactly the same and the webs looked too close to one another. So she starts working with Spider-Man, saying she wants to catch this guy, and Spider-Man, obviously wants to catch him too because there's someone going around killing a young kid and pretending to be Spider-Man, messing with his name. And as the story goes on, we basically find out during this same time that Wilson Fisk has actually employed this fake Spider-Man. This man in black is also the fake Spider-Man. They're one and the same. So after their confrontation at the warehouse, this man in black changed into a Spider-Man suit, found Andy, and shot him. And this man works for Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin. And the Kingpin has this slow but sure plan that he wants to use to basically smear Spider-Man's name as he's going around trying to take over the city. And there's more info on that in a little while as well. There's so much info in this story. I love it. But during all of this, Wilson Fisk has a young girl working for him by the name of Maya Lopez, a girl that's deaf but actually can speak normal and sounds normal and has taught herself to read lips. So you can talk to her and you would never know she's deaf as long as she can read your lips. She will just respond right back to you like, a normal person. You would never know in a million years that this girl is deaf. But on the flip side of this girl, she is actually a great fighter that Wilson Fisk has taught her entire life for the last 8 years, explaining her how to make her a great fighter and teaching her how to mimic Spider-Man as well. But she learns this by just fighting. She's just a normal person. She doesn't have any actual special powers or anything like that. And at the same time, he's employed this fake Spider-Man to smear Spider-Man's name. Later on, as the story goes on, we see that Mary Jane has actually joined the Daily Bugle and became a new reporter. And she's actually trying to find out more information of Wilson Fisk to try to expose him. So she goes to his place a lot to have interviews with him and talk to him. And she's trying to make articles and things like that to try to expose him any way she can. But of course, she really can, because he's basically bulletproof. There's no way to expose the Kingpin. He just has too much dirt on everybody. His main weapon is extortion, that they said a lot in the novel. He uses extortion. If he has anything on anyone, they can't, no one can stop him basically. And that was just kind of the interesting thing, that she's doing this, messing with someone like Kingpin, who could literally crush her head with his hands. And she's basically playing with fire, and it became a kind of a big confrontation with Spider-Man and Mary Jane, because Spider-Man knows how dangerous Kingpin is, and he keeps telling her to just leave it alone, let me handle it. And she kind of has this type of sense like, I want to help, and just because you have powers, it's not fair that only you can help. I want to be my own person and attack this problem myself. So they kind of have like a little bit of a disagreement. But as this is going on anyways, we find out that this fake Spider-Man is actually a man by the name of Bingham. And long story short, he had a miserable life. His mother died, and he just moved to New York by mistake, by the way. He was trying to go somewhere else, and when he was buying the ticket to go to the area he was trying to go to, the person that he was buying the ticket from was someone that had like an accent and didn't understand what he was saying, and accidentally got him a ticket for New York. So he just did it anyways, and he went to New York. But he was a bum. He didn't have a job. He didn't have anything. No one would hire him. So he's basically a homeless person in New York, until one day a very pretty woman, as the book says, appeared to him wearing glasses and saying that, hey, we can make your life better. We can give you somewhere warm to live and food, but you have to take this medicine. And this medicine may either make you better or make you worse, but we'll give you somewhere to live. And since he was living so miserably, he just said screw it, and he decided to go live with these people, and they started giving him medicine. this quote-unquote medicine was supposedly to be a cure for a disease, but they never specified what disease they were talking about. But I believe that was actually a code name for something I'll explain later on in the video that is kind of more of my own theory. They never actually explained what they meant by a disease, but it is pretty obvious of what I think they meant. It's pretty interesting. But anyways, we find out before he went to go to this place to take the medicine, when he was a bum, one night he saw Spider-Man swinging around, and for some reason when he saw Spider-Man, something really weird clicked in his brain. That he thought to himself, I am Spider-Man, and this person is an imposter. Really weird that he thought that as soon as he just looked at Spider-Man one day when he saw him swinging by. After this, he got taken to this place and started taking this medicine, and he started having effects where he saw other people, they would take it and they would die, but yeah, he was getting stronger, faster. He started gaining abilities to stick to walls and things like that. So this medicine that these people gave him was actually giving him Spider-Man powers. So it's kind of crazy. And while he was actually a very, very timid person that would never hurt anyone before, one day he actually had a best friend that he was living with in that place where they're giving everyone medicine. They had them all living together in a room, hospital-like status, where they're all in a room together, and they would just have to take medicine and just do nothing pretty much all day and see what the medicine did. He shared the room with 3 other men by the names of Zane, McGregor, and Reese. They were basically 3 people that were taking the medicine as well, and they lived with him in that room, hospital style. And the thing that was really bad was Zane and McGregor were very cruel people. They were very just mean. I'm going to go into it in a second, actually. And the other man, Reese, was actually really nice. They would take turns watching TV and things like that. They all had to share the room together and only share one TV. So one small example I can give is Zane and McGregor would steal the TV remote and not let them watch TV and things like that. Very small, petty things at first, but as time goes on, they would tend to be really big bullies to them. The Zane and McGregor were always really mean to Bingham and Reese. And one day, Reese had a bad reaction to the medicine that they were taking. He started choking, and he couldn't breathe, and he started panicking, pretty much having a seizure. And while they were in that room, the main thing they would always tell them, the doctors would always tell them, they would say, if anything bad happens, push the emergency button, and we'll help. While poor Reese is over there choking to death by having this bad reaction, Zane and McGregor are sitting there laughing, and they're holding the emergency button and not letting Bingham use it to call for help. They're literally watching poor Reese die, and they're laughing. And out of nowhere, as time goes on, they won't let him push the button, and Reese dies right there on the floor. After he dies, they push the button and laugh. Shortly after all this happens, they take Reese away, and poor Bingham is just sitting there really sad, that his friend is dead and he couldn't save him. And then Zane and McGregor walk up to him and start making jokes, saying, "Oh, you're sad that your boyfriend's gone," and things like that. And at that point, something in Bingham had snapped. And I feel like it only could be truly explained and expressed perfectly through the actual page of the book. So I'm just going to read it to you real quick. Basically, after poor Zane has died on the floor, and they finally push the button after he's dead, McGregor pushes the button and says, "Seizure in room 7, he said in a clipped voice. The minute he took the finger off the button, he and Zane broke out in laughter. They high-fived like they just watched their favorite team score. It was after they took Reese's body away that Bingham came to realize that he was different. He wasn't exactly who he used to be. It wasn't like he was growing, or like part of the old Bingham was gone, and something else had appeared in its place. He was part old, part new. That's how it seemed to him. His body was changing, but it was still his body. He thought things he'd never thought before, but they were still his thoughts. There was probably a word for when this happened, but he didn't know it. Later that day, when Zane asked him if he was going to cry for his boyfriend, Bingham took him by the hair and smashed his head into the floor until there really wasn't a whole lot of Zane's head left. it broke, and that stuff that had been inside was everywhere. McGregor pushed the button really fast that time, but he wasn't breathing either by the time the staff got there. So right there at that point, Bingham snapped, and he killed both of them pretty badly. And after this happened, he gets taken to the director's office, and they discuss with him. And first, Bingham thought he was going to be in a lot of trouble, but they actually were happy about it. And they told him, about the thing, like I said earlier, where it was supposed to cure a disease and that the medicine wasn't working, because they can tell when the medicine is working depending on how his body reacts. But since his body is getting strong, it's a clear sign that the medicine will not cure the disease that they're trying to cure. And this is what I was thinking about when I heard this part. I was thinking, what could they be talking about? So what I think it is, just a quick little theory really fast, I think the disease that they were trying to quote unquote cure was actually, they were trying to create something that would take Spider-Man's powers away. They were probably using some type of strain of his DNA or maybe something like that to probably create something that if Spider-Man took it, it would take his powers away, quote unquote, cure a disease, and then this would leave Spider-Man helpless. So I believe that's what these scientists were trying to do, and when instead it in fact gave Bingham Spider-Man powers, it wasn't, working for them anymore. And at first it looked like they were going to stop giving him the medicine, but then when he explained to him that he's getting stronger and that, he likes it, and they asked him, well, you're getting powers like Spider-Man. And then Bingham just sits there and thinks, well, I am Spider-Man, he tells them, and they look at him weird, and obviously they know he isn't really Spider-Man because he's just some bum they picked up off the street. But for some reason they kind of like that response, and they decided, all right, let's just keep getting this dude the medicine. So they start giving him the medicine and start training him in combat and things like that. So they pretty much, instead of curing Spider-Man and taking away his powers, they actually created another Spider-Man in their own right to use as a weapon. So while their original course of action didn't really work, they found something not too bad of an alternative. And then later on, as Bingham becomes this type of assassin guy that does jobs and things like that, he eventually gets hired by the Kingpin, and the Kingpin wants him to use his powers to basically frame Spider-Man and things like that. And what he does to frame Spider-Man is, one day out of nowhere, Spider-Man, the fake Spider-Man, of course, Bingham, appears in a restaurant and fights the Shocker, which actually was a fake Shocker, someone dressed as the Shocker, and they pretended like they were fighting, a whole superhero villain fight. And he says, Spider-Man, the fake Spider-Man says, I don't care about these people, I don't care if they die, and then like pretty much just putting on this whole facade showing that Spider-Man doesn't care about the people and all this stuff. And during their confrontation, out of nowhere, a bomb explodes because Bingham put a bomb in the restaurant, and when the bomb went off, it killed people. And unfortunately, one of the people that was killed was a young girl by the name of Anika that Spider-Man met at his job and became friends with. So the real Spider-Man's not best friend, but one of his friends, new friends, had died when she saw a fake Spider-Man and a fake Shocker fight in a restaurant. And Spider-Man felt really grieved by this because his name was tarnished, a friend that he made was killed, and it just kept spiraling out of control, just going more and more out of control. And basically, as the story goes on, he just really wants to stop the Kingpin, because as this was going on at the same time, he was working with Watanabe to try to find evidence and things like that to finally take Fisk down. But one night while he was investigating Fisk's tower, he caught Fisk and Maya Lopez, the girl I mentioned earlier that learns how to fight like Spider-Man and works for Fisk. They had a conversation, and he heard them talking, and they said something along the lines that the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, was going to become too big to be stopped. And Spider-Man's like, well, how can he become too big? Like, what would that mean? And he was kind of concerned about that. So, but anyways, he ignores that conversation. He finds some evidence. He gives it to Yuri Watanabe, and they keep kind of doing the same thing over and over, where they would go into his tower, get evidence, things like that, to try to, pin the Kingpin. And nothing really would ever come out of it, because they never really could stop him, because Kingpin is just too big of a person already. He's, horribly financially stable. Anytime that he gets sent to prison, 8 years ago, Spider-Man finally got him sent to prison, and then these lawyers and everything just figured it out and got him out anyways. So no matter what they do, they cannot stop him. And even with the evidence that he's finding, it's not working. But now Kingpin out of nowhere is saying that he will become too big to be stopped. So this actually made Peter really concerned at this point. Like, he's already big. How can he get any bigger at this point? Like, I don't really, he's just kind of concerned at this point. And as he's, going around trying to do these little missions and things for Watanabe, one day he gets attacked by Maya Lopez, that girl, and she's wearing this crazy getup all in black. She has a white handprint on her face, and she's using a spear, and she's trying to kill Spider-Man. They just go on this crazy fight, and he's just like, what the hell? Why is this random girl attacking me? He doesn't know that it's Maya at this point. And it turns out the whole reason why this girl is attacking him is because of the fact that as she was growing up and the Kingpin taught her all these moves and everything like that, he put the blame on Spider-Man, saying that he killed her father, because when she was a lot younger, her father randomly died and she never knew why. And then he took her in, saying that Spider-Man killed her father, and used that as motivation to make her a great fighter and a great villain that could eventually kill Spider-Man. And it was just kind of like this whole crazy thing where he's like, what the hell? I don't even know this girl. And as this is going on, we kind of head back to where I was saying earlier, where Mary Jane was going into the Kingpin's tower to interview him, and she would actually see Maya Lopez normal because she was always there at the tower, because in a sense she was kind of like the Kingpin's daughter, so she was always there and she would help him with work and things like that. But an alternative part of her life was the fact that she was learning how to fight like Spider-Man because she wanted to kill him. And while Spider-Man's trying to figure out who this girl is that attacked him with the spear with the handprint on her face, Mary Jane actually sees the footage and images that Spider-Man took during his fight with her and realizes this girl is Maya Lopez. And Spider-Man's just like, whoa, okay, this girl works with Kingpin, and he kind of starts putting things together, it all starts coming together, where this girl's trying to kill him because she works for Kingpin, and she thinks he killed her father, and at the same time, there's this other Spider-Man doing crimes, doing crazy things, causing people to die, and at the same time ruining Spider-Man's image. And it all comes down to the simple fact that Kingpin is trying to get rid of Spider-Man because he doesn't want him to stop his plan to be quote-unquote too big to be stopped. And pretty much it kind of just goes on for like that for a while, but the whole point of it, the whole end game of the storyline in this novel, is simply the fact that the reason why he was saying he can eventually be too big, that he cannot be stopped, was that he was actually working with Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin, aka Harry Osborn's dad, because Norman Osborn had become the mayor of New York. And the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, had some evidence that he can use to kind of, wrap Norman around his finger and make Norman Osborn do whatever he wanted. And his whole plan, his whole end game, was that he wanted Norman Osborn to appoint him the financial advisor of the entire city. And the thing is, if he became that financial advisor, the person that basically controls all the funds of the whole city, he could pretty much hold the whole city at ransom, and no one would ever want to stop him. No one would ever want to confront him, because he could literally take the financial, ground of the city and throw the whole city in chaos and cut things off, and then no one would have money, no one would have food, everything like that, and it would just throw the whole city in chaos. He basically would become, like, in a sense, like a god of the city, and no one would ever want to stop him because he could just basically throw the whole city in chaos. And Spider-Man is kind of pushed up against the wall here at this point, where he has to stop him before Norman Osborn appoints the Kingpin at this role, because once he hits that spot, he won't be able to do anything to stop the Kingpin. He'll be untouchable. And as this is going on, Spider-Man feels really distraught. He can't find any way to attack this situation. It almost seems hopeless. But then he finally gets a great idea. Simple, but great idea. And that is simply to turn Maya Lopez against the Kingpin. Because Spider-Man knows he didn't really kill her father. He knows about her situation, that she thinks that he killed her father, but it's not true. So he actually goes into the police department and finds the actual evidence of her father's death, and he shows it to her and basically says, "I wasn't the one that killed your dad. It was actually the Kingpin, and the last 8 years of your life has been a lie. You've been living with the man who killed your real father," and yeah. And she like doesn't believe him, but then she eventually goes to his side and starts working with Spider-Man. And their main end game at this point is they need to get the evidence that the Kingpin has on Norman Osborn, because once he takes that evidence from the Kingpin, he can no longer hold it over Norman Osborn, and then at this point, Norman will no longer have to put the Kingpin as the financial advisor of the city. So it kind of leads on like that. So they go to steal the evidence. The evidence isn't there. A huge fight breaks out between Spider-Man with Maya Lopez at his side. Her code name as a superhero now is Echo, so I'll just refer to her as Echo now. So Spider-Man and Echo fight Kingpin and the evil Spider-Man at the same time. At this point, it's revealed that the evil Spider-Man has his own agenda, to where he wants to take the evidence and hold it over both the Kingpin and Norman Osborn's head, and basically become the new crime lord of the city and do whatever he wants, because neither of them will attack him if he has evidence against him. And he then at this point appoints himself the name of Blood Spider, because he's like Spider-Man, but he kills people, so he calls himself the Blood Spider. He has blood on his hands, is what he says. So they fight, but the confrontation ends with Spider-Man and Echo having to run away because they couldn't get the evidence, and the fight was escalating too much, and Echo got hurt while she was trying to fight the Kingpin. And it just simply comes down to the end part of the novel here, where their main objective is to get that evidence back so he cannot hold anything over Norman Osborn. So their main objective is to attack, to get the evidence during a huge meeting where Norman Osborn was actually going to appoint Wilson Fisk as the financial advisor of the city. When they get to that party, they find the fake Spider-Man, and the fake Spider-Man, in fact, actually has the evidence saved on a thumb drive. They fight, and Maya Lopez, aka Echo, steals the thumb drive, but as she's running away with it, she runs right into the Kingpin, and they start fighting with each other. And he's too strong for her. There's no way that she's going to stop the Kingpin. So at this point, she just destroys the drive, destroys the evidence, and at that point, it's gone, and the Kingpin can no longer blackmail Norman Osborn, and Norman Osborn actually just looks at him and says, "Well, I guess I don't have to appoint you as the financial advisor to the city anymore." And then it just ends like that, where they stop the Kingpin from getting that position. Everything is fine. Spider-Man defeats Blood Spider. They take the fake Spider-Man to prison. Maya Lopez decides she'd rather just go live with remaining family members in Montana, where she originally was before the Kingpin killed her dad and took her. So she decides to go, and live with her family in Montana. And the story basically ends with Spider-Man hearing a radio entry from police officers saying that they're attacking Fisk's tower and that they actually have a warrant for his arrest. So the novel ends with Spider-Man going to the tower. And that's pretty much where the game starts. That's where we're going to see the game, when you play the game later on today or tomorrow, whenever the heck you get the game. We're going to see where Spider-Man goes on to fight Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin, and it just goes from there. So, damn, this commentary was a lot longer than I expected. I don't think I've ever made a commentary about 30 minutes long. It's a long novel, 400 pages, and a lot to cover. But basically, long story short, Spider-Man had to prevent the Kingpin from getting financial control of the city. He stopped him. During this, he fought the Blood Spider, aka fake Spider-Man, that was created in a lab. The lab was actually a laboratory by Norman Osborn. It was a laboratory under Oscorp. And the whole thing with Bingham and the fake Spider-Man and all that was a setup by Norman Osborn. He actually created this fake Spider-Man and sent him off to be worked by the Kingpin so he can have a spy on him. And then that's why he stole the evidence and all that. But anyways, the long story short is Spider-Man defeats Kingpin and stops him from becoming that financial person of the city. and now we finally got the evidence to stop him, and that's what we're seeing at the beginning of the game. But anyways, guys, if you guys like this video, please definitely hit that like button and subscribe and tell me what you guys think about episode 1 of Spider-Man lore. I don't think my other ones will be as long as this one. This was kind of pretty damn long because I had to cover as much as I could of the novel, but that's pretty much the main synopsis of the story. You know, if there's anything else I really missed, go ahead and let me know if you guys read the novel, but this was the most important part, so that's what I really wanted to talk about before the game came out. But yeah, guys, if you guys like this video, once again, hit that like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching, guys.